Good morning. My name is John Coleman. I'm the Executive Director of the Bay Planning Coalition, and we greatly appreciate all of you attending bright and early this morning. Today, in order to bring more focus to the ballast water treatment, Bay Planning is hosting today's ballast water briefing. The briefing will facilitate dialogue between the stakeholders in the maritime, water, wastewater industries on ballast water regulations, treatment capabilities, environmental and economic impacts within the Bay. This briefing aims to answer some of the following questions. What are the policies, regulations, technology, and economics of ballast water treatment? I'd also like to thank our sponsors for making this available. URS Corporation has been phenomenal in being a sponsor of our activities here. We hold our workshops and briefings in this facility, and they provide it to us for free. Also, Levin Richmond Terminal Corporation is a sponsor. The in-kind sponsors include the California Maritime Academy, CMAQ, Futures Ports, San Francisco Marine Exchange, California Association of Sanitation Agencies, the Association of California Water Agencies, and the Southern California Alliance of POTWs. So again, I'd like to thank all the sponsors. We're jumped too far ahead. There we go. The slide that you're looking at here indicates the part of the problem we're all facing. Ballast water contains many marine organisms that originate where the water is collected. When transported to non-native waters, these organisms may upset the environment or food web as invasive species. The cost to dealing with invasive species is huge, and the numbers that you're looking at actually go back to the year 2005. They have not been updated, at least that we have not been able to find those numbers. So you can see that the cost is huge throughout the United States, and it's a growing problem here in the United States. Within the San Francisco Bay Delta, you can see that we're the most invaded aquatic area in the ecosystem on Earth, according to the House report. In the Great Lakes, it's considered every 28 weeks there's a new invasion of species. To date, 182 new species are in the Great Lakes region. The Lower Columbia River Basin, it's every 22 weeks. Total of 81 invasions to date. And the numbers that you're looking up there, look for the Bay Delta, and again, that's through the years 1995. What does that do to potentially the economy of the Greater Bay Area? The Bay Area maritime industry is phenomenal in terms of movement of goods here in Northern California. When you look at the 9 Bay Area counties and you throw in the areas of Stockton and Sacramento because of their port facilities, actually we rank 17th in the world in GDP between Indonesia and Turkey, something that most people don't realize. And if we have the limits on what we're able to move products and goods in and out of that area, the impact to the economy of our general Northern California is phenomenal. You can see that the Port of Oakland, which is the 5th busiest port in the nation, the amount of activity it generates. Something else that a lot of people don't realize is the oil industry, the 5 refineries in the 2 counties in Conocosta and Solano, the amount of economic activity, and again, they're moving their products in and out of our area by ships. Specific regulations to be discussed are the California legislation mandating ballast water treatment standards for discharge in California waters, the Environmental Protection Agency's draft 2013 National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or NPDS, vessel, and then the vessel general permit, and the Coast Guard mandates for treatment standards in vessels to install approved ballast water management systems. The presentation will also briefly describe the International Maritime Organization's Ballast Water Convention, and you can see these are the areas of who are impacted. The number of vessels based by EPA is phenomenal, and then when you look at the cost of what the to meet those standards are, the average cost is $315,000 per vessel for treatment systems, and this is potentially a problem in terms of long-term economic modeling for the maritime industry here in California. And this is, again, it's a huge cost, but at the same time, nobody wants to have invasive species in our waters, and we need to do something to be proactive in that area. The California Code of Regulations, Article 4.7, the performance standards for discharge of ballast water of vessels operating in California waters, sets an implementation timeline for discharge ballast water mandated in legislation in 2006. The performance standards for all vessels discharging water into California waters need to meet treatment requirement standards by the year 2016. The final phase of implementation will require discharge ballast water to meet zero detectable life forms in the year 2020. The EPA currently requires vessel general permit under the Clean Water Section 402 for all vessels that discharge ballast water, with the exception of non-commercial vessels and vessels under the 79 feet. The current general permit expires on December 19th of 2013. The draft 2013 process was released in December 2011. The EPA is proposing numeric ballast effluents equivalent to the U.S. Coast Guard's Phase 1 proposed discharge standards, which is equivalent to the standards set by the International Ballast Water Convention. In addition, data collection and reporting requirements. Interesting enough, the United States is not a signer to the treaty for the international IMO standards. With the Coast Guard, under the authority of the National Invasive Species Act of 1996, U.S. Coast Guard set standards for ballast water discharges in waters of the U.S. The most recent ruling was released in March 2012 and amends the Code of Federal Regulations to establish standard for allowable concentrations of living organisms in ships' ballast water discharges in U.S. waters. The Coast Guard is also amending its regulations for engineering equipment that establishes an approval process for ballast water management systems. The final rule is effective June 21st of 2012. The International Maritime Organization D2 standards and Coast Guard Phase 1 standards were determined by both agencies to be consistent with the best available ballast water treatment technology, and we're going to be hearing about that issue today. Then you can see on the next slide, we have what the California interim standards are, what the California final limits are, and then what the IMO and Coast Guard proposed ballast water standards are. And clearly California's limits, based on the legislation from 2006 that were set, are much more stringent than what are the Coast Guard or the EPA regulations. Next slide also gives you a little bit greater idea of the table. Okay, ballast water treatment is, there are 5 ways you can currently treat ballast water treatment. We're going to hear about those today, and the cost effectiveness and what works best. And we have differences of agreement in this room, and that's part of why we're having the dialogue today, to have people be able to talk about what the issues are and how we're going to treat and help fund this activity. The ballast water capacity for common vessels, it's listed up there. It's talking about the size in the cubic meters, and as well as how many gallons of water in terms of millions they carry. And you can see the amount of water and ballast water numbers are phenomenal. Bay Planning is happy to convene 2 panels today consisting of leading science and regulatory perspectives on this important topic. Panels will include representatives from the U.S. EPA, California State's Lands Commission, Matson Navigation, the Port of San Francisco, Stanford Environmental Law Center, California Maritime Academy, and the State Water Resources Control Board. We're also going to have, right after I'm done, a presentation by Lieutenant Deacon from the Coast Guard, and she will be giving an overview of what the Coast Guard ballast water regulations are as soon as I'm done, and then we'll go into our first panel. Our first panel today is going to deal with the science of ballast water treatment. It consists of the leading experts with extensive experience in the science of ballast water treatment. Topics to be discussed are the practicality, the technological complexities, capabilities, and future ballast water treatment systems. Our second panel is dealing with the state and federal ballast water regulations. It will convene a diverse group of federal and state agencies, as well as navigation industry and legal representatives. This panel will discuss the regulations behind the new ballast water treatment standards, as well as the potential impact through phase of implementation. And what we're going to do, our process is after after I get done and then Lieutenant Deacon gives her presentation, Scott Warner, who's the moderator of the first panel, will come up. He'll introduce his panelists. We have an order of presentations, and you all have blue cards at your seat. If you have a question for a panelist, all the panelists, or an individual panelist, please fill it out, and then we will collect those cards and bring them up to the moderator, and the moderator will then ask the questions of the panels. In the event we do not get to your question due to time or other reasons, we will submit the questions to the panelists individually or to the whole panel, and then if they provide a written comment, we'll put that on our webpage for your review. In addition, all the PowerPoint slides that you're going to see today are going to be posted on our webpage, and Berkeley Media, Community Media, who's doing the filming, they will put together the entire presentation today, and then we'll post that on our webpage as well. So that covers that area. Again, we couldn't be doing this without all our sponsors. And I also need to give note, Kayla D'Ambrosia, who's a California Maritime cadet, has been our intern. And she has done a phenomenal job. She's sitting right up here. She's turning as red as her jacket right now. But she did a phenomenal job. The white paper that you saw, she put together. We had a tremendous amount of peer review on this amongst the panelists, and they gave us a lot of input and a lot of direction. Clearly, this is a topic that is evolving and something that we're all learning about and has a huge impact to everybody in California, and at the same time, the topic of invasive species is a huge topic for the health of our ecosystems as well. With that, I'd like to introduce Lieutenant Deacon with the Coast Guard. She's going to make the presentation, and then as soon as Lieutenant Deacon is done with her going through the Coast Guard regulations, Scott Warner will come up here and invite the first panelists to come up, and then we'll begin, and after panel 1 is done, we'll have a 15-minute break, and then we'll convene with panel 2. And then at the very end, the last half hour, we're going to ask all the panelists to come up here and have a dialogue based on the discussions that ensued this morning. So Lieutenant Deacon, if you'd please come up here. And again, thank you for everybody for attending this morning.